Aloha, welcome to today's presentation. I study eschatology, and what that means is the end of the world. Simply put, it really means the end of things, the ends of things. And whenever we look at the end of the world, we're also talking about the beginning of the world. If we look at things in terms of cycles, especially how time is cyclical, how events in this world are cyclical. So specifically today, we're going to take a look at one of the major omens. I have a segment on my channel called Omens, where we look for the omens, the signs, the harbingers of things that are to come. But in ancient history, and specifically that part of history that I call ancient Oblivion, there is one great sign. There's the sign above all signs. And that's the sign that we're going to be taking a look at today. Now, keep this in mind. It goes by many names across time. People have personified it, they've cartoonified it, they've described it, and put it through their own perception filters. But today we're going to look at a specific cartoonification of this sign. This sign is called the Phoenix. Welcome to my channel. I want to give a big shout out to Liz BC, newest member of the Good Vibe Tribe. She just joined my channel. Thanks for your support. Appreciate you. And hello to everybody who's watching in the live stream. Good to see you guys. All right, sweet. So without any further ado, please do give me a thumbs up in the chat if the audio is good. I'll check on that here in a second. And in the meantime, let me give this little introduction. We're going to be talking about the Phoenix. I'm going to start by telling you, sharing with you a breakdown of my own research and study on what the word Phoenix means, the etymology of the word. Where did it come from? Where did it originate? We'll talk about the sign of the apocalypse. What exactly is this? What is it? Is it an actual bird that flies around in a zoo? Is it something else? I'll tell you what I believe it is. Actually, specifically, scientifically, and historically. We'll talk about historic records. We're going to talk about different historians and ancient scriptures and writings that all alluded to this being an actual event or an actual thing that people witnessed and encountered. We're going to talk about references and types, including totem poles, the world tree, the cross of Jesus is one of the most famous ones, the thunderbird, the cosmic bird, Irminsul, Jacob's ladder, etc., and so on and so forth. We're going to talk about light pillars, an event, or not an event, I guess it's called a weather event, called light pillars. Blue jets, transient luminous events. We're going to talk about plasma volcanoes, especially terrestrial energy that builds up inside of the Earth and comes out every other cycle. We're going to talk about Project Bluebeam towards the end, and Hyperborea, the Garden of Eden, caves, the Cave of Saviors, caves of energy, oracles, and so on and so forth. Also, Kazadev 555 just gave me a super chat. Thank you. All right, cool. Looks like, let's see, how's the sound doing? Maddie Soul Tribe, thank you. Kimberly F. Nanette, thank you very much. Okay, sounds like it's doing good. All right, cool. So I'm going to jump into the presentation. The audio looks good on my side as well. Welcome. I hope that this is something of value to you. I hope that you're able to get something out of this, if at the very least, entertainment. Okay? But we are going to be looking at this through the eyes of the plasma apocalypse as I presented here on my channel. Many people study apocalyptic and cataclysmic events, the reset, mud floods. Different people have their own little puzzle pieces, and I like that. So I'm going to offer you mine. So take what resonates with you. All right, let's begin. Let's start with the word. Well, let's play some cool stuff in the background, shall we? Yeah, let's definitely do that. Let's see, is it this one? Yes. That should do the trick. Nope, that's not it. Hold on. Sorry, I was going to make these animate here behind me. Took a while to get these done. And how do I do that? Is it this? Alright, this might take me one quick hot second. Sorry, 1 second. Is it this? Oh, play. Is that it? That is it. Okay, cool. All right, sweet. Well, these are for you to enjoy while I talk, okay, basically. So these are also to give you some visual examples. These are all going to be, in essence, cartoonifications and examples so that you can, have some visuals to go along with the audio presentation and what I'm going to be discussing throughout this presentation. All right, so with that said, let's start off. Oh, let's start off with the word, phoenix. Why is it spelled so strange? It's P-H-O-E-N-I-X. It sounds like it's a Latin word. It sounds like maybe Greek or some ancient language or something. The interesting thing about the origin of the word is no one really knows exactly where it came from. No one really knows its origins. Thankfully, that's something I very much enjoy studying and researching, is word origins. Now, if you break down large words, you'll find that they always have a root. They always have some sort of a core to them. In ancient Phoenician, which is highly relevant, and Paleo-Hebrew, root words typically have 2 letters, sometimes 3 letters, right? In the word phoenix, we have pho, or you could say fu. It's P-H-O. That's the very first part of the word. The suffix, or the last part of the word, is nix. Now, I've said this many times on my channel. You may have been driving down the street and seen some Vietnamese restaurants, and they have this word pho, or phu, in them. P-H-O. And the reason for that, many people believe that the Vietnamese got that word from hearing and listening to the French. And the French had a word for fire called feu. And they had a dish called pot au feu, which means a pot of fire, or a pot that you place on the fire. You cook noodles, you cook stuff, basically. So the Vietnamese inherited that, and they called it pho, P-H-O. Or we would say pho here in the Western world, right? It means fire, and it actually means light originally. Many of these ancient words for fire originally meant light, but then they came to mean fire by extension as words grew and evolved over time into different meanings and different words and different languages. And this all comes from the Tower of Babel right there, which is a whole different subject, but I might come back to it. So pho, fu, however you'd like to say it, means light or fire by extension, right? And then nix. Nix means nighttime. And in ancient languages like Latin, it means night. Nix is of the night, like Stevie Nicks, her last name means night. If you have Nix in your name, then your name means night. That's what it means. So essentially, this word phoenix means night light. It means a light of the night. And if it's phoon, right, it's of thee. In ancient Hebrew and Phoenician, on meant of thee. So of the light night, or night light, basically, right? And that's what this is. This is a light that people see during the apocalypse, or after the apocalypse, I should say. We don't have it right now. These are terrestrial beams of energy. Hold on, did I freeze? Hold on, let me double check. I'm just checking everything. I got a lot going on my computer. Let me see if I froze. I think I froze. Hold on. I'm going to reset my little camera here. Oh, we might have to, let's see if it works. It might, but it might not. Well, this is interesting. This is an interesting development. Hold on, let me see if I can get this fixed up. All right, technical difficulties. Give me one quick second. I'm going to unplug my camera. Please enjoy this little presentation, and I'll be right back.
Around the world men's thoughts will fly, quick as the twinkling of an eye, and waters shall great wonders do. How strange, and yet it shall come true. Beneath the water men shall walk, shall ride, shall sleep, shall even talk, and in the air men shall be seen in white and black and even green. For in those wondrous far-off days the women shall adopt a craze to dress like men in trousers wear, and to cut off their locks of hair they'll ride astride with brazen brow as witches do. On broomsticks now there'll be a sign for all to see. Be sure that it will certain be. Then love shall die and marriage cease, and nations wane and babes decrease, as wives shall fondle cats and dogs, and men live much the same as hogs. Pictures alive with movements free, boats like fishes beneath the sea. When men like birds shall scour the sky, then half the world deep drenched in blood shall die. Then half the world deep drenched in blood shall die. For those who live this century through, in fear and trembling this shall do. Flee to the mountains and the dens, to bog and forest and wild fens. For storm will rage and oceans roar, when Gabriel stands on sea and shore. And as he blows his wondrous horn, old worlds die and new be born. Fiery dragon will cross the sky 6 times before this earth shall die. Mankind will tremble and frightened be, for the 6 heralds in this prophecy. For 7 days and 7 nights, man will watch this awesome sight. The tides will rise beyond their ken to bite away the shores, and then the mountains will begin to roar, and earthquakes split the plain to shore, and flooding waters rushing in will flood the lands with such a din that mankind cowers in muddy fen and snarls about his fellow men. And when the dragon's tail is gone, man forgets and smiles and carries on to apply himself. Too late, for mankind has earned deserved fate. His masked smile, his false grandeur will serve the gods their anger stir, and they will send the dragon back to light the sky. His tail will crack upon the earth and rend the earth, and man shall flee king, lord, and serf. And men will die of thirst before the oceans rise to mount the shore, and lands will crack and rend anew. You think it strange, it will come true. And in some far off distant land, some men, oh such a tiny band, will have to leave their solid mount and span the earth, those few to count. And those surviving this will then begin the human race again. But not on land already there, but on ocean beds stark, dry, and bare. Not every soul on earth will die as the dragon's tail goes sweeping by. Not every land on earth will sink, but these will wallow in stench and stink of rotting bodies of beast and man, of vegetation crisped on land. And those that live will ever fear the dragon's tail for many years. But time erases memory. You think it's strange, but it will be. And before the race is built anew, a silver serpent comes to view, and spew out men of like unknown to mingle with the earth, now grown cold from its heat. And these men can enlighten the minds of future man to intermingle and show them how to live and love, and thus endow the children with the second sight, a natural thing, so that they might grow great.
Well, here's the good news. You know that this is a real YouTube channel. This happens sometimes. This happens to me sometimes. I do have some technical difficulties. Though there's a Phoenix emoji in the chat. I didn't know that. That's cool. All right, hold on. Let's do an audio check first, just to make sure you guys can hear me. I think I'm back. Which means we get to continue on. All right. So the audio. Let me check the audio myself. Yes, the audio's good. I look good. Everything looks good. Okay, sweet. I'm moving. I'm not frozen any longer. Where was I? Phoenix means nightlight. All right, let's move on from that. All right. Hey, thanks a lot. I'm glad I had that little movie for you guys to check out in the meantime. That was Mother Shipton, by the way. I'm going to actually talk about Mother Shipton a little bit later. We're going to talk about Mother Shipton when we talk about Caves of Power. All right, so let's start with, what is the Phoenix? It's a sign. It's always been a sign. It's a sign that is intimately linked with the apocalypse, with cataclysms, with catastrophes. And people saw this in ancient history. They saw this bird. And whenever we get to the part of historic records, you'll hear many people say there's only one of these birds in the entire world. That is because it's not a physical, actual bird. Obviously, if it's a bird that sets itself on fire, which is the legend, right? The phoenix would go back to its resting place. It would go back to its nest or its home, and it would envelop itself in flame, which in the ancient world meant light, remember, originally? So it would envelop itself in flame, and then After a while, a new phoenix came out of those ashes, and it would be reborn. It was self-begotten, as they say. But it's a sign of the apocalypse, okay? It's a sign that we're going through a different, a change in this world. Hey, Silver Sister, thank you so much for your, you started watching me while you were living in Phoenix. That's awesome. Well, thanks for your support. It's a sign of change in this world. We don't see it right now. Not only is it a sign of change, just like these blue beams that you'll see here, I'm going to correlate the two. Not only is it a sign of change, it's a sign of good, positive change. Whenever the phoenix comes into the world, it's associated with cataclysms and death and all of these catastrophes, but immediately after those are finished, immediately after those are done, we transition into a time and an age that's more like magic than the time and the age that we have now, where we depend upon technology in order to gain power over the animal world, over one another, or over nature, whatever it may be. We transition into a world that is electrically amplified in both in the atmosphere and terrestrially, and therefore it resonates with us, and we become amplified. Our souls, our spirits, our chakras, everything about us, even our brains become charged, and people tend to get more knowledge during this time. It ushers in the golden age, the phoenix, as it's sometimes referred to. Remember, it goes by many names. It's not just the phoenix. It doesn't only look like a phoenix. It all depends on the what's happening in the atmosphere, people's perspective, where they are on Earth, and we'll get into more of that in just a bit. Now, what exactly is the phoenix? What do I believe it is based on my research scientifically, right? If we were to break down what it actually is, well, if it's not a physical bird, and if it is something that seems to have been seen by many people the world across, and if it is an event, then it's something that happens within our world. Not way out there in the far reaches of space, but something that happens here, underneath the firmament, underneath the physical vault of the sky that we live under, and above the surface world that we live on top of. Now, this gets back to the plasma apocalypse theory that I have. Whenever I talk about the plasma apocalypse, there are two major players in the plasma apocalypse. One of those is the eye in the sky, and these red spectrum serpents, which are electrical plasma that descends from above. They're just outside of the firmament, way up there on the other side of the firmament. When that firmament breaks open, all of those electrical serpents and wonderful snakes and dragons and fireworms and however people saw it, they descend down, they spread out, they separate, they divide, and they ground themselves to the earth, scarring and leaving their mark wherever they drag their tails across. The other player is seen as the opposite. Instead of being something that's so destructive, it's seen as being something that is very creative and supports life and brings life back to this world. These are terrestrial beams of energy. And by beam, let me be specific, I mean gases that Mother Earth releases, gases that are pressurized deep within the hollow Earth, deep down inside of us, oxygen, nitrogen, and other gases. Whenever our atmosphere, or whenever the dome breaks open and the atmosphere depressurizes up here on the surface, it depressurizes throughout the rest of the Earth as well. So all of those gases that are locked in deep into the heart of the Earth, in the underworld, or Sheol, or Tartarus, or Hell, or however you'd like to see it, the hollow Earth, those are released, and they shoot through every crack and every crevice and every cave and every volcano and every opening within the earth. And they rush through at such a speed that movement causes them to electrify. Exactly how static electricity works whenever you rub against the carpet or rub a balloon on your hair. The same process electrifies these inner earth gases, and they become charged, they become activated, they become plasmas. And those plasmas burst out of all of these crevices and cracks and cave systems and volcanoes and whatnot, and they shoot up, they erupt as a beam straight up into the heavens, straight up into the sky. And when they get high enough, now let me back up just a moment. When this happens, there's many other things that happen when the atmosphere depressurizes. Okay, one of those things that happens is that it creates vapor. the world across. It creates a foggy, misty condition because whenever when you have rapid depressurization, just like in the cabin of an airplane, it will instantly start creating fog and mist and moisture in the air. So these beams are shooting through mist and moisture, and the higher up they get, the different the perspective is, and the light acts differently. It starts to spread out. It starts to divide into two, or it seems to divide into two. It's really dividing like 360 degrees, but it looks like it's separating into like a Y shape or wings or a hook. You know, in the ancient world, hooks had two ends on them, like nails, like tent pegs. They had these two little ends on them so you could tie the rope around it. And that's the origin of the ancient Vav. Now, this beam, this column, this pillar that shoots up into the heavens, it's light, it's fire, it's plasma, and it will interact and move about with the winds and with the atmosphere. However, it will be grounded in that spot because that's where it comes from. It can't dance around the earth, like it can't move about like the red plasma that's coming down that just walks around the earth and whatnot. Those can move about because those are rooted from the sky. Now, they'll stop once they're cut off from the sky and the sky heals itself, or the firmament heals itself. However, these blue beams, I often refer to them as blue. However, throughout history, they have also been known as a golden color, a white light, a cyan, a bluish-green color, usually in the blue spectrum when they're regarded, okay? But this is all dependent upon how the gases interact in the atmosphere. Because there's different parts to the atmosphere, different layers right now as it is. And whenever those different gases are charged, or whenever they interact with electricity that charges them or turns them into plasma, they will have a corresponding color, okay? So it's all gases and stuff, just like the auroras. That's how we get the auroras. So for example, the aurora borealis in the North Pole, people typically see them as a green color, and that's because those are plasmas that have lost most of their energy. They're real weak plasmas and whatnot, but then as you move up and you get higher up, you get different colors of the auroras. This bird, if you see the plumage and you see the wings, and we go over these descriptions of how the phoenix was actually historically described, it was described with the exact same colors that we find in the auroras, in both the aurora australis and the aurora borealis, right? Now, on a side note, I also believe that the word or means light in ancient languages, especially Hebrew and Phoenician. And then bor or bar is a bar. It is a pole. It is a beam. It's a column and a pillar. This is where ancient pillar worship came from. This is why people worshipped a straight line, or sometimes a straight line that branched out into two, or a cruciform, or many of these other types of symbols and images. They were these bars of light, these beams of light, these posts and pillars and whatnot that shot up from the earth, and they had an effect on us. They had an effect on the natural world, the world across, and they introduced what academics calls and refers to as the oxygenation event. The oxidation? Yeah, oxidation event, where for unknown reasons, oxygen, however long academics says this happened, way a long time ago, back when we had megafauna and megaflora, which are giant animals and giant plants. That's the same exact time that modern academics and mainstream science says that we had this influx of oxygen seemingly coming out of nowhere. I believe that it's the oxygen's coming out of the earth. And the earth is creating an abundance of oxygen. Not just oxygen, but nitrogen as well. Keep that in mind. We have a whole bunch of nitrogen in our atmosphere right now, and this is why, because the earth creates it. As a matter of fact, an abundance of nitrogen is being created right now within the earth. She's creating her own gases through radioactive decay, right? So there's radioactive elements deep within the earth. So for example, if you take carbon-14, which is everywhere basically, especially in the atmosphere, if you take carbon-14 and you put it through a slight chemical process or an alchemical process, it changes into nitrogen-14. It's very easy to do. This is also known as the philosopher's stone. which represents Mount Meru, which gives birth to this light of the world, which gives birth to the biggest, tallest, widest beam of plasma that shoots up out of the largest opening in the world, which traditionally is located at the exact center of our world at the North Pole. If you look at ancient maps, especially those from the Middle Ages, they reflect an entirely different world than the one that's shown to us by modern academics. And on those maps, there is a circular land that is cross-sectioned and divided into 4 quadrants by 4 rivers. These are the rivers of paradise. These are the rivers from the Garden of Eden. And there is a tree of life at the center. It's not a real tree, just like the phoenix is not a real bird. All right, so it's a sign of the apocalypse. What exactly is it scientifically? It is ionized gas that erupts out of the earth, and it is plasma that shoots up and branches out and becomes an aurora. Those branches that branch out, they become these feathery wings of an aurora. And you'll see many examples right here behind me of auroras that eerily look similar to birds, dragons, angels, and other creatures that have these wings. All right, so that's exactly what the phoenix is. We've talked about what it means, what the word means. It means nightlight, essentially. We talked about what it is. It's ionized gas that the earth gives birth to. Now, let me also clarify something. I mentioned that there is one large one. There is the biggest one that traditionally is at the axis mundi, or the center of the world. There are many others, though. They're smaller. They're subsequent. See how these spread out at the top right there? That's exact same thing that I'm talking about. It spreads out as at the top. Now, these are all small scale, tiny examples of these light pillars, of these beams of energy that shoot up. Now, they look more like that when they're on a grand scale, when you're talking about a cosmic bird that has something to do with the creation of this world and contributing to life in this world. Now, let's jump into some historic records. Now, I'm going to be perusing and skimming over some historic records. And we're going to start with Cornelius Tacitus from his book called The Annals. And so many of these people are going to be like ancient historians, explorers, and so on and so forth. But most of these records are going to be from a long time ago. They're not going to be from the modern day because we don't have these pillars of light and these beams of light and these poles that look like they're holding up the sky to keep it from falling on us at the moment. At the moment, we live in the dark. At the moment, we live during an epoch of darkness. We live during an age of night, or an age of things being hidden from us. We are shrouded at the moment. But whenever we go through this next cycle, because it goes back and forth, cyclical, when we go through this next cycle, everything that is hidden will be revealed. Even in the physical world, not just internalized and all have, revelations of my spirit and consciousness and all of that. Yes, that's a byproduct. That's something that also happens. But I'm speaking actually, and what some people refer to as literally, things that actually happen physically on our world, with us, with the world that we live in and on top of. Now, if we go over to ancient records, Cornelius Tacitus in his book called The Annals says that during the consulship of Paulus Fabius and Lucius Vitellius, the bird called the phoenix, after a long succession of ages, appeared in Egypt and furnished the most learned men of that country and of Greece with abundant matter for the discussion of the marvelous phenomenon. Now, I'm going to comment on all of this, okay? First, this guy says a long time ago, there was a bird called the phoenix after a long succession of ages. An age is... Let me go back just a step. The appearance of this heavenly sign, of this heavenly and terrestrial sign, this beam of light, this beam of energy, the appearance of these is how we mark time. Once we see that pop up, that's year 0. Once we see it descend and retract and go back down into the earth to charge, that's the last year. So that's how we mark ages. That's how we mark epochs and vast periods and vast distances of time. Sometimes people use hyperboles, and they'll say 1,000 years. In the ancient world, 1,000 years wasn't hyperbole. It was an exaggeration of numbers. So after a long succession of ages, it appeared in Egypt and furnished the most learned men of that country. So corresponding with the appearance of the phoenix was also a rise in awakening, you could say, where there was all of a sudden these learned men or wise men that showed up, just like wise men that showed up at Jesus's birth. I also want to go back to the location. Now, please keep this in mind. This is from my perspective and my research, and that indicates to me, my own research indicates to me, that many, if not most, and probably all, I don't like to say all, but a whole bunch of the world's current places, countries, names of places, names of mountains, names of rivers, are all renamed after other places that we have long forgotten about. That quintessential place goes by many names, but it is Hyperborea. It is the Garden of Eden. And this is what my second book that I just finished is called. It's called Return to Hyperborea. And in that book, I talk about and I mention, as well as here on my channel, that many of these place names are renamed after the original places, towns, countries, villas, sections, whatever you want to say, locations that are in that circular land at the center of the world. They had their own little city-states and their own little places. Egypt is one of them. India is another one. Babylon is another one. As a matter of fact, if you read in the Bible, it equates Babylon and Egypt to Jerusalem. All three of them are basically equal because they're in the same exact area. They're not in different places as they are today. Just like the Euphrates and the Tigris of today are not the original Euphrates and Tigris. We're missing two other rivers. And people speculate about, oh, well, they must have dried up or they must have this and that. No, paradise has 4 rivers. It always has 4 rivers. The 2 of them didn't dry up. The paradise is not in the Middle East. And therefore, the modern day countries that we equate to biblical stories or ancient history like Egypt and Jerusalem and so on and so forth, India, they come from those 4 country quadrants and subsequent phantom islands, as they're known now, that exist around that circular country at the North Pole. So what am I trying to say? In short, I'm trying to say that be careful, because sometimes when you read in these ancient records that people refer to Jerusalem or they refer to Egypt, they might not be talking about modern day, the places that were renamed in honor of those homelands, okay? All right, so he says, the bird called the phoenix, after a long succession of ages, appeared in Egypt and furnished the most learned men of that country and of Greece with abundant matter. Greece is another one too. On ancient maps, I believe Greece is called Grokland. So they wanted to talk about this marvelous phenomenon. Now, typically when you hear somebody refer to something as a phenomenon, that means they don't know what it is. It's something, it's an anomaly, basically. You might as well say anomaly, right? I don't so much see it as a phenomenon. You know, I don't want to like come across as knowing everything about everything, but I have a theory about it. I have like a good, strong idea of what it physically actually is, which I'm sharing with you today. I'm not saying it's 100% correct. I'm just saying it's what it's compelling to me. And if it's compelling to you, sweet. If it's not, that's fine too. He goes on to say, it's my wish to make known all on which they agree with several things. So he says, I'm going to share with you what they said about this phoenix. Questionable enough indeed. So even at his time of writing, he's saying, and many of these historians, they'll say, hey, this is passed down from generation to generation. This is hearsay. This is speculation that has been brought my way, but it's tradition. It's myth, it's legend, it's lore. Family member after family member going back in time have passed this on to us. So he says, I'm going to share with you what they told me. Although he finds it questionable, but not too absurd to be noticed. So he says there's substance here. There's substance to this. This isn't just make-believe. This isn't just nothing at all. There's substance behind this cosmic bird that's been discussed. He goes on to say, that is a creature sacred to the sun. Now, I'm also going to comment that there is not always just the point of focus that goes around above us right now called the sun. If you research ancient histories, you'll find there were many suns, many lights, many luminaries up there in the heavens that were regarded as suns, okay? As many as, I've seen accounts that list as many as 12 at one time. 10, 12, somewhere around there. I will tell you this too, there's also a huge ancient version of what we call the sun today, which is an inverted dome up there on the firmament, and it becomes the eye in the sky. It becomes the all-seeing eye. It looks like Nibiru is going to crash into us, or Venus, or something like that. That was also regarded as a sun that brought life. He says, it's a creature, this phoenix is a creature that is sacred to the sun, differing from all other birds in its beak and in the tints of its plumage, so its coloration. It's held unanimously by those who have described its nature. As to the number of years that it lives, or how long it lasts for, there are various accounts. So at his time of writing this, many different guesses, many different estimates, many different histories and stories about how long this phoenix was seen, how long this sign was seen in the skies for, right? And I believe that this has a lot to do with the pressure that builds up and how much pressure is released from cataclysm to cataclysm during these polarity shifts that we go through that release pressure or introduce pressure into our world on the surface from the hollow earth. The general tradition says 500 years. So at the time, it was about 500 years. If you go back even further, it was less time. It was during, in the book of Jubilees, they counted 50-year increments, which was the Jubilee, which was the year that the slaves were set free whenever they went through their own little cycles. The general tradition says 500 years. Some maintain that it is seen at intervals of 1,461 years, and that the former birds flew into the city called Heliopolis successively in the reigns of Sesostris, Amasis, and Ptolemy, the third king of the Macedonian dynasty. Other birds. Okay, I'm just going to skip through this part. Some of it's boring. All antiquity is, of course, obscure. So he's saying these are some estimates, okay? From Ptolemy to Tiberius was a period of less than 500 years. Consequently, some have supposed that this was a spurious phoenix, not from the regions of Arabia, and with none of the instincts with ancient tradition has attributed to the bird. For when the number of years is completed and death is near, the phoenix, it is said, builds a nest in the land of its birth. It has to build its nest in the land of its birth. Like I said, it's connected to that spot, right? And it infuses into it a germ of life, from which an offspring arises, whose first care when fledged is to bury its father. This is not rashly done, but taking up a load of myrrh and having tried its strength by a long flight, as soon as it is equal to the burden and the journey, it carries its father's body, bears it to the altar of the sun, and leaves it to the flames. All this is full of doubt and legendary exaggeration. Still, there is no question that the bird is occasionally seen in Egypt. So, he's saying, this is the facts of the matter. I don't know if I believe it, but this is our history, okay? Now, let me talk about the bird reappearing out of its own ashes. There's two different ways that this happens with ionized gas or with plasma, okay? One of those is that whenever you have a beam of terrestrial plasma that shoots up out of a hollow mountain, a volcano, basically, right? Which I call a plasma volcano, and I might come back to that concept. Rupus nigra is the plasma volcano that gives birth to the largest, the phoenix, basically. It's also known as Mount Meru, Sinai, Olympus, and many other names. So whenever you have a beam of plasma that's ionizing the same spot in the atmosphere for an entire epoch, or an age, or 1,000 years, or a millennium, or however long, a very long time, what happens is that it has... it affects the atmosphere even after it goes away. So whenever we go through another polarity shift and that beam retracts and it goes down, it's still leaving a residual glow. It's an afterglow. It's actually called a plasmic afterglow. And it causes this golden glow that vaguely takes the shape of what was there before. And that will stay for a time until that energy dissipates in the atmosphere in that spot. So it leaves a ghost behind, you could say. And many have said. It leaves a ghost, it leaves an offspring, and it's more of a golden light color as opposed to whatever color the gases were that were ionized. Anyways, so that's one way that it gives birth to itself after it dies out of its own ashes. Another way is that it just retracts and it stays away until the next time that the Earth goes through another shift, which is a polarity shift. Whenever we go through another polarity shift and those gases are re-released up out of the Earth and the energy reverses direction and goes up out of the Earth instead of coming down from above, then we see the bird reemerge. It's born again. It comes back up out of Sheol or Hades or the Underdark or however you want to call it. All right. Oh, another thing is there's a connection here with certain smells. So myrrh, frankincense. These are also noted in the biblical birth of Jesus story as well, right? These are the smells of the Garden of Eden. These are certain smells that are given off by these gases that people smell. It's hypernature, I like to call it. Okay, there's a movie called Troll, and they talk about this smell called like hypernature, I think they called it. It's kind of like a very naturey kind of smell. Very sweet and whatnot, but that's what the Garden of Eden smells like. That's what Hyperborea smells like. That's what many of these fantastic lands and paradise type places from antiquity, they have. Hey, Sarah Smith. Hey, welcome everybody. Somebody just gifted channel donations. Woodsocket Truth Seeker, shout out to you. That was very kind of you to give out channel memberships. All right, congratulations to everybody. Let's go on to this next one. All right, this next one comes to us. This is from an Egyptian manuscript called the Papyrus of Ani. Now, An or On means sky, and typically it's associated with the sky god. But there's a little portion in here that discusses the phoenix. And in in Egyptian, the phoenix goes by different names in different languages and different territories and whatnot. Sometimes it's known as the Bennu, or the Bennu bird. So here it says, the chapter of the making of the transformation into the Bennu bird. The Bennu bird, which was at a later period identified with the phoenix, was supposed to be self-produced and was therefore a type of the god Khopera, a god who is self-produced and self-begotten. By the recital of this chapter, Ani was able to declare that the germs of every god were in him, and that he was yesterday, i.e. Osiris. So there is a connection between Osiris and this bird. Now, if you look at some of these images, there's different forms that the plasma takes on. Sometimes a stick figure man holding his arms up into the air. Sometimes it's a bird with his arms outstretched. Sometimes it's someone hung on a tree. Other times it's that one. See that caterpillar looking one over there? Look for those, okay? That is the spine of Osiris. The spine of Osiris is in the farthest, most western point of the world. In the ancient world, west was Uost, which meant down, which means downward towards underground, basically. And then Ostre, or Easter, Esther, East, etc., meant star. It meant upwards. It meant traveling upwards in the direction that star moves in, or that light moves in, going upwards. So east was up, west was down. That changed over time whenever these light pillars retracted and we don't have them anymore, and people don't look up that much anymore. We don't see as much wonderful brilliance and majesty in the heavens as we used to, but the time will come when that will change, whenever people will be able to see much more up there in the sky. And that will give rise to brand new legends, brand new stories and whatnot. So Osiris, the foremost of the Westerners, right? The one that lives at the foremost of the Western world. The Western world is underneath us. It's the hollow earth. The tip of the Western world is where the hollow earth meets the surface, or an entrance into the hollow world if you're up here, or into our world if you're down there, right? But anyways, the reason it's a spine is because it's a jet of plasma that shoots straight up, and then it creates these little toroidal fields as it goes up. It develops over time, and you see what looks like a spine or a ladder, or it's cartoonified in many ways. This is also Jacob's ladder. It's also like a beanstalk, Jack's beanstalk and whatnot. Let's see, anything else on this one? There's a relationship with the tortoise. It says the allusion to the tortoise is not quite clear. And then it has some Egyptian hieroglyphs here. It seems to mean that the Ani is clothed with a garment which is as durable as the shell of a tortoise. Well, if Ani is equivalent to the sky, which is a dome, right? That would be a reference to the shell of the tortoise, the dome of the world, the dome of the sky. Let's see. So, Ani is clothed with a garment which is as durable as the shell of a tortoise. Yes, this sounds to me like a reference to the firmament. Let's see what else. Let's see. The rubric, which is found on some papyri, informs us of a knowledge of this chapter will provide the deceased with the food which Osiris eats. Will enable him to take any form that he pleases. So a shapeshifter, that's exactly what this is. All the plasma is shapeshifters. They change their shape dependent upon the atmosphere, their energetic status, the winds, and all these things that can cause them to change shape, right? What else? Let's see. Osiris, the food that Osiris eats would be equivalent to the food of the gods, ambrosia and haoma and soma and what do you call that in Hebrew? Manna, other things too, right? To travel over the earth with Ra. Ra is equivalent to so there's always a connection. Okay, so if sorry, I'm like stumbling here. I'm nervous. So if we have a beam that shoots up from the center of the world, you will always have a corresponding sun directly above it, or a moon directly above it. You'll always have some sort of circular light object. Sometimes it goes through its own little phases, just like the moon does. Sometimes it'll be a crescent, sometimes it'll be a circle or whatever. That is the inverted dome that is at the apex of the firmament, and it lights up and people can see it. Typically a red spectrum. So that is that sky god goes by many names, but they are always seen together. If you have one, you will have the other, right? If you don't have one, you won't have the other. Just like right now, we can't see either of them. So that's on you to study it or believe it or take what resonates. All right, what else? I think I'm good on that. Let's move on to this next historic reference. This is coming to you from Herodotus, from his writings called the Histories. Now he says, let's see. Herodotus says, there is another sacred bird too, whose name is Phoenix. I myself have never seen it, only pictures of it, for the bird seldom comes into Egypt. Once in 500 years, as the people of Heliopolis say. Helio it basically means sun, and then polis means city. The reason they call it polis is because wherever these terrestrial beams or poles came up out of the ground, they were strong beams or strong poles or god poles or god sticks or however people describe them in different tribes across time. Where those god sticks were, the people settled around those lights, those terrestrial beams, because it provided light and energy and sustenance and other things. So they called those polises, which were cities. These are I call them places of power. It is said that the phoenix comes when his father dies. If the picture truly shows his size and appearance, his plumage is partly golden and partly red. So these are auroras high up in the atmosphere. We have golden auroras, we have green ones, we have purple ones, we have red ones. Typically, the green ones are lower, the red ones are much higher, and so forth. He is most like an eagle in shape and size. What they say this bird manages to do is incredible to me, flying from Arabia to the temple of the sun. Now, the temple is a house for a god. The house of this god right here is what I call a plasma volcano. It's also known as I call it also affectionately the Cave of Saviors. Many gods of ancient history, antiquity, including many people speculate Jesus himself was born in a cave, birthed in a cave, birthed by Mother Earth herself, birthed by Gaia, you could say. So, he conveys his father increased in myrrh, which is what do you call that? A scent, and buries him at the temple of the sun. So this is also something you will find with both the phoenix and many godlike or savior type or demigods or giants and other things, is they will be born and they will die in the exact same spot. They have to, right? This is how he conveys him. He first molds an egg of myrrh, as heavy as he can carry, and then tries lifting it. And when he has tried it, he then hollows out the egg and puts his father into it and plasters over with myrrh, the hollow of the egg into which he puts his father, which is the same in the weight as his father lying in it, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to comment on this in just a second. Sometimes I don't like how it sounds in ancient languages. It can sound boring, you know, because we don't speak that kind of language. But I'm gonna paraphrase it for you in modern language, okay? Layman's terms. Conveys him encased in the temple of the sun in Egypt. Okay, so let me just explain all that, okay? So they're born in the same place, they die in the same place, same as Jesus. He was born in a cave, died in a cave, or rose from a cave, etc., right? Now, this egg stuff. I want to talk about this egg, the cosmic egg, the egg of creation and whatnot. If we have a lodestone mountain, which is just a fancy way of saying a magnetic mountain, which is what all of these are. Every single one of these places of power, many of these caves, but especially volcanoes, they become magnetic because of that constant electrical charge that's rushing through them. It magnetizes them, and it all of that electricity pulls towards it the most magnetic elements, magnetite specifically, right? So anyways, imagine you have this plasma volcano, right? Which is the unfinished pyramid, just so you know. So you have this plasma volcano, and then you have a beam of energy that is shooting up out of it. Well, around that lodestone mountain, around that magnetic mountain, it will have a dome all the way around it of magnetism. Magnetism holds back plasma. Magnetism acts as a force against plasma that can move it and push it, because plasma is repelled by a strong magnetic force. So if you have a beam of plasma shooting straight up, it's going to pierce through that dome, but some of it is going to get trapped inside of that dome all the way around that magnetic mountain, and people on the outside are going to see it fill up with plasma. They'll see a dome or an egg, and something's being birthed out of that egg, or you know what I mean. And these become the legs of the squatter man in some of these images and stuff. So you this is also where we get like the peace sign and stuff from. All right, anyways, let's go on to the next one. Did I have anything else I wanted to say? Yeah, that's the egg. That's the cosmic egg. There's also an egg above us too, okay? So the firmament has its own little dome, as above, so below. The one below is more spiritual, it's more energetic. The one above is more physical, and it's actually a part of the firmament. However, it also has a corresponding invisible magnetic field that corresponds to the shape, or conforms to the shape of the inverted dome. I don't want to get too deep and too detailed, but that's the shield of Zeus. It's called the Aegis, or you could say Aegis, which is where the word Aegis comes from. I believe. All right, let's continue on. Oh, hold on. My light just turned off. Technical difficulties abound. All right, see if I can get this working. Yes. All right, sweet. That wasn't too hard. Whew, man. Are you guys having a good time so far? Let me just take a quick sip of soda here. All right, sweet. Let's continue on. We got a lot more to cover. Now, next up, I'm going to bring you Pythagoras, right? So if you went to high school, they pounded the Pythagorean theorem into your mind, and that's pretty much what most people know Pythagoras for, right? There's a whole bunch I could say about Pythagoras, but we're just going to stick to this. I'm reading from a website right now called poetryintranslation.com, and it says, Pythagoras's teachings, the eternal flux. Actually, hold on. No, we're going to go to the Phoenix. Boom. All right, so this is going to be from the teachings of Pythagoras. And it says here, yet these creatures receive their start in life from others. There is one, a bird, which renews itself and reproduces from itself. The Assyrians call it the phoenix. It does not live on seeds and herbs, but on drops of incense. Now, I'm going to stop right there. I want to talk about ghosts, which what you're looking at are ghosts. Okay, the plasma are basically ghosts. They're electromagnetic energy signatures. They're basically life forms, okay? Now, in the ancient world, people would appease these ghosts, or if they're very large ghosts, sometimes they were seen as gods or demigods or whatever it may be. They would try to appease them or to keep them away from places where they lived. They would set out food for them. This was called a food offering. Sometimes they would set out milk or some sort of a liquid that goes bad. not water, milk or something like that. The reason why is because whenever you set out food or milk, just this is exactly where milk and cookies comes from for the whole Santa Claus thing, is when that food decays, when that milk goes bad, it starts giving off gas. That gas it just starts to, it becomes rotten, you know what I mean? And it gives off all this gas. Well, all of that gas is what these beams are composed of. This is what they eat. This is if they get more and more of this gas, they can ionize it and they can continue on, okay? They need this in order to sustain themselves. They need gas because that's what they're made of, is gas. All right, continuing on. It does not live on seeds and herbs, but on drops of incense and the sap of the cardamom plant. When it has lived for 5 centuries, it then builds a nest for itself in the topmost branches of a swaying palm tree. So, imagine the imagery. You have a beam, which is like the palm tree, the trunk of the palm tree, right? Just a beam. And then the phoenix always rests on the top of some sort of a palm tree type beam, okay? This is also the sign that people down in Mexico a long time ago were told to look for in order to settle down, to find their homeland. Which is why Mexico has this cactus, which is like a symbolic of the beam, and then this eagle on top of it, and it's holding on to a serpent in its mouth or whatnot. That's all the same story from the Hopi to Aztec and whatnot. Continuing on. When it has lived for 5 centuries, it builds a nest on the top of a swaying palm tree. That's the plasma. Using only its beak and its talons. As soon as it has lined itself with acacia bark and smooth spikes of nard, cinnamon fragments, and yellow myrrh, it settles on top and ends its life among the perfumes. To say that from the father's body, a young phoenix is reborn, destined to live in the same number of years as its son. When age has given it strength and it can carry burdens, it lightens the branches of the tall palm of the heavy nest and piously carries its own cradle that was its father's tomb, and reaching the city of Hyperion, the sun god, through the clear air, lays down in front of the sacred doors of Hyperion's temple. So there's always going to be a correlation between the entrance, the temple, the opening or the cave that goes down into the underworld, the plasma volcano on the top of it, which is Rupus Negra and Mount Meru, and then the home of the celestial gods, which is that inverted dome at the apex of the firmament. You're always going to have a correlation between those 3 things. Those are all different forms of temples and houses for gods and stuff. Let's see. I'm just going to skim over this next part. I think that's about all I really wanted to say with that one. Let's continue on. All right, next up, we've got Flavius Josephus. And this is a historian, a Jewish historian. This is from one of his works called The Wars of the Jews. Now, this is really interesting. This goes back to, I believe, around the time of like 60 AD, the fall of Jerusalem, the war with the Romans and whatnot. And he describes these signs. Now, he doesn't say phoenix by name, but this beam of light that spreads out from the top is often seen as a cruciform, a gigantic T or a Y in the sky, and also a sword that is stuck in a stone, right? The sword in the stone, the singing sword, Excalibur. That is what he saw. Now check this out. He says, "Thus were the miserable people persuaded by these deceivers, and such as believed God himself, while they did not attend nor give credit to the signs that were so evident, and did so plainly foretell their future desolation. But, like men infatuated, without either eyes to see or minds to consider, nor did regard the denunciations that God made to them." Let me say that in layman's terms. These people did not heed the signs. They did not pay attention to the omens that were clearly happening in the world that they lived in. And they didn't take any of it seriously. That's our world today. "Thus, there was a star resembling a sword, which stood over the city, and a comet that continued a whole year, So there was this star, this sun, this light that stood over the city. This is the star of Bethlehem in the original city of peace. That's how I know the modern, that's one of the many reasons why I know the modern Jerusalem is not Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a city of peace, not a city of contention, not a city of war and constant fighting and bickering and politics. The real one is the Garden of Eden at the center, at the middle. There's different segments to it, like I talked about. All right, he goes on to say, let's see, I'm going to skip forward for just a bit. He says, at the 9th hour of the night, so great of a light shone around the altar. Now, remember, this might not be the modern Jerusalem. This might be Hyperborea. This might be the Garden of Eden, okay? The altar would be the place where the light comes out of. The Ark of the Covenant, the altar of God, the plasma volcano, etc. Okay, so at the 9th hour of the night, so great a light shone around the altar. This is the glory of God, or the glowing of God, or the heavens. This light lasted for about a half an hour, which is also interesting because that reminds me of the book of Revelation, where it says there was silence in heaven for about a half an hour. This light seemed to be a good sign to the unskillful, but was so interpreted by the sacred tribes as to portend those events that followed, right? So whenever you see this light disappear or this light appear in the sky, it will be followed by great earthquakes and more gases being released and all of these cataclysmic types of events, right? Okay, good. Now, I'm trying to find my place. Where was I? I should probably highlight it. Oh, this light seemed to be a good sign to the unskillful. So some people saw it as a good sign, and it is. If you see these beams of light and the glory of the heavens and whatnot, that's a good sign. However, you have to keep in mind there's balance to everything, okay? There has to be tribulation in order for the golden age to come. To clean your house, you got to throw some things away and redecorate and all that stuff, right? Now, he goes on to say, at the same festival, also a heifer, which is a fancy word for cow or bull, as she was led by the high priest to be sacrificed, brought forth a lamb in the midst of the temple. If we're speaking symbolically, or if we're referencing, like, let's say he's not talking about an actual historic event in modern Israel that he saw or whatever, but let's say he's talking about legends that were passed down from Hyperborea or from the Garden of Eden. He's talking about these events right here. This heifer is, sometimes you'll see some pictures up here where right above that beam you have this crescent, right? Remember I told you that inverted dome goes through its own phases. So sometimes, and depending on your perspective, people would see a crescent, right? And this would be the ox in the heavens, the holy cow. There's different, way people described it, but it's some sort of a heavenly bovine that is represented by these cow horns. So we had this heifer brought forth a lamb in the midst of the temple. So directly underneath that heavenly cow, it gives birth to, or it's associated with, this light, this terrestrial beam. Like I said, there's always a connection between the terrestrial beam of energy and that heavenly light right above it. Okay? The word lamb, where does it say lamb? Yeah, brought forth a lamb. Lamb, the etymology of lamb, it means lamp. It means light. It means a light, basically. Okay, that's why lambs are called that, because they look a lot different and they basically glow under different light conditions in the world to come. Whenever we have more of a purple sky and a purple glow, the lambs will look way different. Anything white will look way different than they do today, just like if you're standing under a black light. Let's see. Oh, moreover, the eastern gate of the inner temple, which was of brass, which is related to words that mean fiery and shiny and stuff, and vastly heavy, and had been shut with. I'm gonna sum up the rest of this. Okay, basically he's saying that there's this thing in Jerusalem called the Eastern Gate, and it's notorious for being impossible to open. And some people go so far as to say only God, or a God, however, depending on how you see it, only God can open the Eastern Gate. Or the gate can only be opened when God allows it to be opened. That's how solid and strong and firm this Eastern Gate is. Remember, I said though, we learned a long time ago, west meant down, east meant up. the gate of the east was this opening in the heavens. It was the gate of the heavens, or Heaven's Gate, just like how that cult is named after Heaven's Gate. Not saying that, not saying they were right, but I'm saying there's truth in everything. I think that's good for... Oh, wait, let me tell you about these chariots of fire that he mentions too. I want to find that real quick. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Now check this out. At the same time that he saw this sword in the sky made out of light, he says this. Or, according to the story, the same time that this happened. This signal foreshadowed the desolation that was coming upon them. Desolation means just like, things being wasted. Besides these, a few days after that feast, on the 1 and 20th day of the month, Artemisius, a certain prodigious and incredible phenomenon appeared. I suppose that the account of it, this story, would seem to be a fable, like fiction, if it were not related by those that saw it, and were not the events that followed of it so considerable of a nature as to deserve such signals. For before sunset, chariots and troops of soldiers in their armor were seen running about amongst the clouds and surrounding the cities. Moreover, at that feast, which we call Pentecost, which means like to count to 50, as the priests were going by night into the inner court of the temple, as their custom was, to perform their sacred ministrations, they said that, in the first place, they felt a quaking, and they heard a great noise, and after that they heard a sound of a great multitude, saying, "Let us remove hence." But what is still more terrible, there was one Jesus, the son of Ananus, a plebeian and a husbandman, who 4 years before the war began, and at that time when the city was in very great peace and prosperity, came to the feast, whereupon it is our custom to make whereupon it is our custom for everyone to make tabernacles or tents to God in the temple, began on a sudden to cry aloud, "A voice from the east, a voice from the west," up and down, right? "A voice from the four winds, a voice against Jerusalem and the holy house, a voice against the bridegrooms and the brides, and a voice against the whole people." This was his cry as he went about by day and by night in the lanes of the city. All right, hold on. Let me see if I just want to read the rest of this. No, I don't. So I'm gonna sum up what this says to me. What's happening, right? So we have these chariots of fire. We have this war going on in the heavens, these soldiers and chariots and balls. Now, I've talked about this before, electromagnetic phenomenon called transient luminous events, which in an amplified electrical field in the atmosphere, they wouldn't be transient. They wouldn't be quick lights that you see happening like flashes. They would be lasting substantially longer, right? So we have ball lightning, which would be like the thrones, or the wheels of these chariots, the wheels within wheels, Ezekiel's wheels, etc. And then we have the cherubim, which are more like sprites, like electrical sprites that you see up in the atmosphere, that they curve upward and they curve downward, and they have a little pinch right there in the middle. Now, when he saw this, after he saw these chariots of fire, and then the eastern gate opened up, which was amazing, right? What else happens here? It was around this feast time. Oh, these are around holy days. This is why we have holy days. These are set apart times when certain events are likely to happen. Okay? Let's see. So he talks about it's around Pentecost time. This is Pentecost, but biblically speaking, is also whenever the people develop telepathy. Okay, so whenever you have an amplified energetic field in the atmosphere, like I said, it resonates with your spirit, your soul, and your actual physical synapses in your brain and stuff, and people are telepathic, or they have the potential to be telepathic. Whether they can control that or not, that's a different story. But this is this rushing of this wind. It's energy that bursts forth throughout the world in different places. Okay, so he says a voice from the east, up, a voice from the west, down. Right? This is the singing sword. So we don't just have plasma that appears because it's a light. It's not silent like when you turn on a light switch at home. No. This is an explosion. that's ripping through the atmosphere at the speed of light. So this creates booms the world across. There's probably going to be 3 main booms, which is my theory is that there's going to be an anode, a cathode, plasma volcanoes, and then Mount Meru in the middle. Those 2 fire off first. They act as the witnesses that come before the king, or the king, the main one that comes, which is from Mount Meru at the center. So there's these booms. There's also this vibration from all of that electricity buzzing and humming at a macrocosmic scale, which means it's not going to be really high pitched or anything. It's going to be like chanting. And oftentimes it's described as the voices or the rushing sounds of many waters. This is electricity and what it sounds like when it's on a large scale. Okay. All right. That's all I want to say about that one. Let's continue on. All right. Next up, we've got, Lactantius. Hold on, I forgot who Lactantius was. Oh, he was a Christian author and an apologist from the late 3rd to the early 4th century AD. So this is from the Dark Ages, okay? So this Christian author from the Dark Ages goes on to talk about the Phoenix. And that's what we're going to cover right now. All right, so this is attributed to Lactantius. I don't know for certain if he's the original one that wrote this. Listen to this. There is a happy spot, retired in the first east, where the great gate of the eternal pole lies open. This is describing Babylon. This is describing the gate of the gods, the entrance into the heavens and into the underworld in that same spot at the Axis Mundi. It is not, however, situated near to his rising in summer or in winter, but where the sun pours the day from his vernal chariot. There a plain spreads its open tracts, nor does any mound rise, nor hollow valley open itself. But through twice 6 ells, which is a measurement of distance, that place rises above the mountains, whose tops are thought to be lofty among us. So he's saying in this particular region are mountains that are really steep, lofty, they used to be called, okay, like cliffs. Here is the grove of the sun. A wood stands planted with many a tree blooming with the honor of perpetual foliage. This means this is a garden of paradise, okay? This is a magical forest, if you want to see it like that. When the pole had blazed with the fires of Phaethon, which is one of the ancient sun gods, that place was uninjured by the flames. So this, if these flames equate to plasma, which fire is also a type of plasma, this is called a cold plasma. So there are plasmas that won't hurt you, like this one. Okay, these terrestrial ones are more inclined to be cold plasmas rather than those cosmic plasma filaments that are coming down from above that are like 5,000 degrees. They were uninjured by the flames, and when the deluge, which is a fancy word for the flood of the world, had immersed the world in waves, it rose up above the waters of Deucalion, which is another name for Noah, like Noah's Ark. No enfeebling diseases, no sickly old age, nor cruel death, nor harsh fear approaches hither, nor dreadful crime, nor mad desires of riches, nor Mars, nor fury, burning with the love of slaughter. So he's saying this was a peaceful event. This sign brought peace. It has a residual vibe that comes with it. No cloud extends its fleecy covering above the flames. Above the plains. Nor does the turbid moisture of water fall from on high. No rain, just like it's talked about in the book of Genesis. But there is a fountain in the middle, which they call by name of living. This is the fountain of youth, which is this right here, okay? It's not regular water. Regular water can be charged by energy and plasma and stuff like that, but this is the fountain of youth. Why? Because the electricity stimulates your cells and it causes cellular regeneration, in short. What else? Okay, it's talking about the fountain of living waters. It is clear, gentle, and abounding with sweet waters, which bursting forth once during the space of each month, 12 times irrigates all the grove with waters. This is referenced in the Bible when it talks about this tree that feeds the nations and stuff. Here is a species of tree. So now, instead of the phoenix, he's talking about it from the angle that it looks like a tree. Okay? This is the cosmic tree, the tree of the world tree. Rising with lofty stems, bears mellow fruits, not about to fall on the ground. This grove, these woods, a single bird, the phoenix, inhabits. Single, but it lives reproduced by its own death. Once again, just one phoenix, only one main great bird, cosmic bird of creation, according to many tribes and nations across the world, across time. It obeys and submits to Phoebus, a remarkable attendant. Phoebus is, I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's sort of the root of our word phobia, and it's related to like that area that goes down into Hades and stuff. Its parent nature has given it to possess this office. So it inherit. This is its birthright, basically. When at its first rising, the saffron morn grows red. The sky turns red. When it puts flight, the stars with its rosy light, 3 times and 4 times, she plunges her body into the sacred waves. Thrice and 4 times, 3 times and 4 times, she sips water from the living stream. She's raised aloft. So this is another thing. I just want to talk about this red-colored sky for a moment, okay? There's a few different things that will turn the sky red. One, there's cosmic plasma above, which I believe is ionized hydrogen. Probably other gases too, but the hydrogen turns red when it's ionized, or a magenta-like color. Another thing is the nitrogen that's way up in the sky, and oxygen too. They can also turn red depending upon how high up they are and how much pressure there is in the atmosphere. So whenever this happens, our entire sky, our entire light spectrum will change. We're going through a constantly shifting light spectrum, or a change in our color spectrum. And whenever it's going to end in darkness. So right now you get all of it. You get the rainbows and you get the pearlescence and all that. And it's going to end in black. It's going to end in darkness. But then whenever these plasmas and these gases release into the upper atmosphere, the sky itself, way up in the heavens, will be red. Initially it'll be purple, okay? And that has a lot to do with the types of gases that are being ionized as well. So you'll have a purple dawn in this vapor canopy from the depressurization, or the rapid depressurization. You'll have way more oxygen, so it'll be an oxidation event. And then over time, those gases burn off and they settle down into a red glow as they start layering themselves out in the upper atmosphere. I'm just looking up because I'm like imagining it. So the sky will turn red, and it will be a bloody red. As a matter of fact, in the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, they saw this and they called it a bloody red Velkin, which is their way of saying the firmament or the sky. And then that eases into a golden color or an amber color. It's the golden age. It's an orange colored sky. Anyways, I don't want to get too far off topic. Let's continue on reading this account. Let me take a sip here. All right. So we're talking about how this phoenix drinks from the waters of life, etc. She is raised aloft, high up into the sky, and takes her seat on the highest top of the lofty tree. This is the tree of the world, because the branches spread out, right? Creates auroras, which look like wings. The lofty tree, which alone looks down upon the whole grove, so the whole Eden, and turning herself into the fresh risings of the nascent Phoebus, she awaits his rays and rising beams. And when the sun has thrown back the threshold of the shining gate, and the light gleam of the first light that has shone forth, she begins to pour strains of sacred song. It starts to vibrate, right? This electricity starts to vibrate, and it creates music, basically, or voices, or however you want to see it. And to hail the new light with wondrous voice, which neither the tones of the nightingale nor the flute of the muses can equal, with strain. So it's very beautiful, whatever it is. But neither is it thought that the dying swan can imitate it, nor the tuneful strings of the lyre of Mercury. After that, Phoebus has brought back his horses to the open heaven. There's a lot of horse symbolism when it comes to these plasmas and stuff too. I don't want to get into that right now. And continually advancing and displayed his whole orb, she applauds with 3 repeating flappings of her wings. And having 3 adorned the fire-bearing head is silent. So there's these 3, which to me, like I said, is anode, cathode going off, and then Mount Meru in the middle. She also distinguishes the swift hours by sounds not liable to error and day and night. An overseer of the groves, a venerable priestess of the wood. This is very much, these beams, sometimes people see this as a male god or a male figure or whatever. Sometimes it's seen as a female. It all depends on your perspective and attributes. Oftentimes it was seen as both, actually, and that's where the whole Hermes and Aphrodite becoming one thing kind of comes into play, because it's describing this. All right, let's see. I'm going to skip through just a couple of these here. When she has left the sacred places through a desire of being born again, then she seeks this world where death reigns. Full of years, she directs her swift flight into Syria, to which Venus herself has given the name of Phoenice. This is where the Phoenicians come from as well. Okay, that's me. I know many people will say Greece, Turkey, that particular region of the world. I believe that that's where many of the legends, where many of those people from the Phoenix, from the area of the Phoenix, Tartarians, and there's barbarians, the Barbars and Berbers and all of that stuff. There's these 12 tribes, or 13, depending on how you look at it, that left the Garden of Eden. They were expelled. They had to leave this garden. They had to leave Hyperborea. The Hyperboreans came down from the north, and they traveled, and they were nomadic. They were called the Nem, or of the Nem, which means Nemo. They were of the leftovers. They were of the allotted. They were of the survivors, basically. And they would settle down in the northern hemisphere, just kind of going in a circle as they traveled the world looking for a place to live, or trying to find their way back home, because the world's been flipped upside down. Their compasses are the opposite. Everything looks different. They've survived an apocalyptic cycle. All right, let's continue on. It says, then she chooses a lofty palm tree, and the top reaches to the heavens. There is no actual physical tree that touches the firmament, okay? There is beams of light, though, that can shoot up there and look like they're touching the firmament. So this is the tree that the phoenix rests on top of, and has the pleasing name of Phoenix from the bird, and where no hurtful living creature can break through, or slimy serpent, or any bird of prey. So, this is the staff, this is the caduceus of Hermes, the staff of Hermes, which is just a pole with a circle on the top of it, which is the all-seeing eye, and then you have like this serpent that's intertwines, right? It's all plasma, it's just like that, right? And that fights against, or it's seen as fighting against, these evil glowing red serpents that descend from the cosmos whenever the firmament opens up, and all of that cosmic electricity wants to ground itself to our world, right? So whenever this appears, whenever that beam of light appears, that means that the polarity reverse is complete. So at first, the firmament opens up. All those beams of light haven't come up yet because the energy in our world hasn't reversed direction. So first thing you have is all that cosmic energy comes in as the hair of the gods, or Medusa's hair, fiery serpents, dragons. They all come in, and people are freaking out, and they need it to stop, and they pray for it to stop, and they humble themselves. They get on their knees, and no one's ever seen anything like this, and they don't know how to make it end. Is this the end of the world? I don't know. And then they see a sword shoot up from Gaia, from Mother Earth, from a cave, and it looks like it pierces right into the heart of Cthulhu, or the Kraken, or all those different words for these sky serpents and stuff. And what happens actually is not that those beams kill off those red plasmas. These beams right here, they don't kill the red plasma snakes from above, which is the staff of Moses in the wilderness. Remember how he had a bronze serpent and stuff, and people had to look at it and stuff. What kills it is whenever the polarity reversal finishes, the magnetic barrier or dome goes back up and recreates that pressure, and those gases high up in the atmosphere, they can form to that inverted dome shape, and the firmament fixes itself because it's made out of ice, and those gases refreeze high up in the atmosphere, and they quite physically cut off the hair of the sky god, or they cut off those serpents and whatnot. And it happens at the exact same time that you see this beam shoot up into the sky. So people attribute the victory to the beam, when in reality, it's this invisible dome that goes back up and cuts the plasma off, right? Anyways. Then Aeolus shuts in the winds of hanging caverns, lest they should injure the bright air with their blasts, or lest a cloud collected by the south wind through the empty sky should remove the rays of the sun and be a hindrance to the bird. Afterwards she builds herself either a nest or a tomb, and she perishes. That way she may live, regarding the phoenix. Yet she produces herself. Hence she collects juices and odors, which the Assyrians gather from the rich wood, from the Arabia. All right, I'm going to skip forward here. Let's see what else we got. All of this is really good. I just don't want to read the entire thing. Oh, here we go. In the meantime, her body destroyed by death, which proves the source of life. Which I believe that some of us here resonate with these terrestrial beams of energy or goodness, and most of us during this time resonate with that evil energy that made its way in, that stays on the surface world as that positive terrestrial energy disappears and has gone down into the earth. Some of us are what I call the remnant, or just as the Bible refers to, the lost tribes and the remnant. We are the lost tribes of the tree of life. We have a residual energy that we vibe with. We're good people. Right? However, if you ask evil people that, they'll also say they're good people. All right, let's continue on. Let's see. Oh, yes. So it collects itself into the appearance of a well-rounded egg. We discussed that again. We discussed that before. Its figure before it assumes the shape of the phoenix, having burst from her shell, shoots forth, even as caterpillars in the field. Interesting, there's a caterpillar reference, because oftentimes it looks like that on petroglyphs. They're fastened by a thread to a stone. Okay, I want to read the rest of this here. I think I kind of want to move on. Let me see if anything else catches my eye here. Hold on, let me look up phoenix here. Yeah, that's about it. Let's move on. That was really good, though. Man, that was insightful, right? Especially the way they describe this. They accurately describe paradise. And paradise is described in this way. Paradise is, physical terrestrial paradise. That's how my newest book, Return to Hyperborea, begins. There is a physical paradise on Earth. Check it out if you'd like to. Next up, what are we going to go to next here? Oh, this next one... Let me see what we got. This next one is... Oh, this is from Dante. So this is from Dante's... what is this? Inferno? Oh, Metamorphosis. This is actually Ovid's. I'm sorry. This is Ovid's Metamorphosis. I thought it was from Dante. I think there's some stuff in here from Dante as well. But if we go to Ovid's Metamorphosis, the whole entire book of the Metamorphosis, or Metamorphoses, or however you want to describe it, by Ovid, describes, in many of these books... ancient writings and the Iliad and stuff like that, like they'll describe these events. They cartoonify them quite often, but they're describing these happenings, these cataclysms that happen, these strange phenomenon of these lights in the sky and gigantic beings and gods and creatures and monsters and stuff. Now, here in this book, it says, a sinner is pierced by a serpent, just where the neck and the shoulders form a knot. That would be called the nape of the neck, right back here. Some people will hear a reference, right, to a particular anime. A sinner is pierced by a serpent, just where the neck and the shoulders form a knot. La dove, la colo, alla spalle, sanoda. I guess that was the translation. The result is that the sinner is incinerated, literally turning to ash, only then to recompose into human form. This metamorphosis from man to dust and then again to man is a perverse resurrection, explicitly compared to the death and rebirth of the phoenix, a mythological bird used in Christian imagery as a figura Christi, or a figure of Christ, a type of Christ. Now that's the main part I wanted to read from here, is the phoenix was a Christian symbol. This symbolized Jesus Christ. This symbolized the Son of God. This symbolized the entire story of the life of Jesus. I think there's good reason for that. All right, next up. Other variations of the phoenix. So like I said, this is a cartoonification. It all depends on people's perspectives, what culture they're from, what they already are used to, what they've learned in life so far up into the point where they experienced and witnessed and saw this phoenix, and how they talk about it with their family and their friends and stuff, right? It's open to interpretation. It's open to what Doctor Who calls your perception filter, right? For you Doctor Who fans out there, which I am. Other variations of the phoenix. Now, I'm going to read this. This comes from cosmicdeva.com. This is a really good article. It says, while the phoenix is most commonly associated with Greek mythology, there were several other cultures that hold references to similar solar birds or fire birds, right? Fire meaning light. That have often been compared to the phoenix itself. The most commonly connected bird is the goddess Bennu from the Egyptian mythology, which we've already sort of touched on, who is almost identical to the Greek phoenix. However, that's because they're the exact same. However, there are also similarities that can be found in Russian, Indian, Native American, and Jewish mythology. We're going to skip the Bennu one, and we're going to go to the Milcham. The Milcham in Jewish mythology. Jewish mythology makes a reference to a creature that is believed to be the phoenix. In their version, the phoenix is known as the Milcham, or the Milcom. Malcolm, also, you could say. The story begins in the days when people were still allowed in the Garden of Eden. Imagine that. It is said that when Eve gave in to the temptations of the serpent and tempted Adam with the fruit, she also offered the fruit to the other animals of the garden. The Milcom bird was amongst the animals that refused to partake in the fruit, and was therefore rewarded for its faithfulness. It was given a town where it could live out the days in peace. Every 1,000 years, the Milcom bird would end one cycle of life. This is how we kept record of time, like I talked about. But being immune to the angel of death, because it had remained faithful to God, it would be reborn again. In reality, what's happening is this terrestrial beams of ionized gas shoot up for the time that the energy is moving in that direction. And then whenever we go through a polarity reversal, that energy retracts and the earth charges. It pulls all the energy down into the heart, right? And then the next time it'll reappear. Now, the next one is Garuda. In Hindu mythology, Garuda is a solar bird that is known to be the mount of the god Vishnu. Hold on, I just want to comment on that. Oftentimes, Vishnu is portrayed as a blue god. Many times in Hinduism, especially, these gods were blue. There's an interesting story where Vishnu himself became an arrow that shot up into the heavens to destroy these floating cities that were up above. So we have a connection between Vishnu being a beam, a column, an arrow, however you want to see it, a holy arrow. And then Garuda, this solar bird, was known to be the mountain of the god Vishnu. There's always a mountain. There's a holy mountain because that's where the arrow comes out of. And was also seen as a protector against the evil serpent. He is known to have been described as the king of all birds and often depicted as being a giant bird in mid-flight. So, as far as protection against these other serpents, these cosmic ones that come down that can harm you and electrocute you and, petrify you and do other things too, if you're near to these magnetic mountains, they won't come near you. If you're on the holy mountain, those serpents can't touch you because they're repelled by strong magnetic force. Next up, we've got the Thunderbird. The Thunderbird in Native American mythology, probably my favorite of all the mythologies, are the various ones that are strung throughout all of the Native American tribes here in North and South America. The Thunderbird. First and foremost, it's called Thunderbird because it makes thunder. It's electricity, right? Makes sense. The Thunderbird is also thought to have loose connections to the phoenix, similarly to the Garuda of Hinduism. The Thunderbird is known to guard against evil, specifically against evil serpent figures, and is thought as a protector, right? So once again, guarding against those evil cosmic serpents from above, or plasma that comes down. The Firebird in Slavic mythology. The Slavic firebird has obvious ties to the phoenix and was likely created in their folklore when the ancient cultures exchanged stories and legends on their trade routes. However, unlike many of the cultures who told of the phoenix, the firebird was depicted as a giant falcon, which also in Egypt, they also have their own falcon god, which also has an association with that circle, right? That circle I was talking about, usually a red circle. The firebird was depicted as a giant falcon instead of a peacock. Oftentimes you get a lot of peacock symbolism because of the different colors. It is thought of because the falcon symbolized ultimate masculinity in the Slavic culture. The Slavic firebird was also different from the traditional phoenix because of its life cycle. Their firebird was meant to symbolize the different seasons. The bird finishes its life cycle in the fall months, but is revived again in the spring. This is also different times. We had different seasons during the last age, okay? And we will have different seasons in the coming age. There won't be 4 seasons like we have now. There'll be one huge season at first. That'll split into 2 long seasons, and then it'll divide again. With its revival comes beautiful music that brings happiness and new life, the singing sword. Let's see, anything else I want to talk about here? Scooby-Doo. Yeah, you know, it's just kind of mentions like the varying ages of the phoenix that different people mention. Typically 500 to 1500, but then again, it all depends. Okay, yeah, I want to skip on to the next one. All right, next up, we've got Pliny the Elder, right? He's got, man, all these ancient historians, they'll teach about them in colleges and stuff, but it's like they disregard all of their fantastic stories of monsters and gods and strange things. They only pick and choose. They're salad bar colleges, you know what I mean? Pliny the Elder is no exception. Natural history, which is an amazing read. So in Pliny the Elder's Natural History, he has a whole chapter called The Phoenix. I'm just going to skim over the first couple of paragraphs here. It says, Ethiopia and India, not modern India, not modern Ethiopia. These, I believe, are on the Arctic map, specifically Mercator's Arctic map. I pointed out these exact regions before. More especially produce birds of diversified plumage, and such as quite surpass all description. Beautiful. They're auroras. In the front rank of these is the phoenix, that famous bird of Arabia, though I'm not quite sure that its existence is not all a fable. It is said that there is only one in existence in the whole world, and that one has not been seen very often. We are told that this bird is of the size of an eagle and has a brilliant golden plumage around the neck, while the rest of the body is of a purple color, except for the tail, which is azure with long feathers intermingled with a rosy hue. The throat is adorned with a crest and the head with a tuft of feathers. The first Roman who described this bird, and who has done so with the greatest exactness, was the senator Menelaus, so famous for his learning, which he is owed to the instruction of no teacher. He was self-taught, right? He was a researcher. He tells us that no person has ever seen this bird eat, that in Arabia it's looked upon as sacred to the sun, that it lives 540 years, and when it becomes old it builds a nest of cassia and sprigs of incense, which it fills with perfumes. So we're seeing a lot of similar stories that are popping up, right? Especially the description of the colors and its wings. This is describing the auroras. It's not a physical bird. It doesn't eat physical things. It eats gas. It is gas. That's what it eats, like we talked about. Let's see. Oh, these smells also. So we smell these different gases that it creates and that it emanates. It also can change the different types of gases based on how the electricity interacts with those gases. It can take electrons and give electrons, and this is the Philosopher's Stone, basically. Okay, it can change many different things, but gases are easy for it to do that. What else? Let's see. Anything else here? The same person states that the revolution of the great year is completed with the life of this bird. Ah, I like that. So they recorded years differently. in the cycle before ours and in the cycle to come, we're not going to record years by a point of focus going around in circles, okay? Not that that won't return, but when it does, it's going to move at a different speed, and it's going to be a lot bigger, and it's going to look altogether different and be a totally different color. In the ancient world, they have to use the heavens, they have to use the sky in order to, calculate how much time is passing or whatever. And one of the things they used was that inverted dome in the heavens. So one of the things obviously was the appearance of the phoenix, or the appearance of this beam of energy, this pole of light, and then its retraction, or from the appearance to its next appearance. Those are different epochs. Those are different ages and periods of times. Lots of time. Another one was the appearance of that red eye in the sky, or that red planet, or that red circle up there in the heavens, or however you want to see it. And that red one up in the sky goes through its own cycles and phases, just like our moon does, because that's actually the physical moon that projects what we call the moon. And that goes through its very long, slow changes, and it has crescents, and it has half moons and stuff like that. And the ancients had their own words for that, which we today don't tend to understand. Not we, modern academics, right? Many people who base their research with the flavor of modern academics and modern historic research and whatnot, they'll take modern how we deduce years and how we keep track of time and stuff, and they'll project that onto the ancient past, not realizing there were different suns, there were different luminaries, there were different things in the sky that people looked at, and those gave rise to different methods of timekeeping. All right, let's continue on. Oh, so with the revolution of the great year, when it's completed with the life of this bird, and that then a new cycle comes around again with the same characteristics of the former one in the seasons and the appearance of the stars. And he says that this begins about midday when the sun enters the sign of Aries. I'm just seeing if there's anything else I really want to get into right now. Nope. All right, let's move on. What's next? There's something called the Aberdeen Bestiary. I love bestiaries. I love studying the bestiaries. They're basically these ancient books from the Dark Ages that chronicle monsters and strange events and happenings. Well, the phoenix is mentioned and shown in the bestiaries. On this particular one, the Aberdeen Bestiary, I don't have a picture of it, unfortunately. It's shown that the phoenix is resting between two trees, and that's where it lives, is between these two tall trees. These are the Anode Mountain, plasma volcanoes, and the Cathode Mountain, two plasma volcanoes, smaller ones than Rupus Nigra, smaller ones than Mount Meru, and these act as the two lampstands, the two witnesses, the two trees on either side of the Ark of the Covenant, or Jesus and on the two that were crucified on either side of him, positive and negative. And that's how the phoenix is depicted in many of these bestiaries as well, is living between these two trees, right? So you've got, and oftentimes this is sort of like a god figure. I'm like seeing all the pictures. This is a god figure, or the phoenix, or Jesus, or whatever, and they're often portrayed as holding on to two staffs, or two poles, or they're holding up two lambs, or two lions, or two animals that might represent or be related to the words light. All right, continue on. What else? This one's interesting. So this comes from chabad.org, cha and then bad.org. And this is more of ancient Judaism. It says, unlike some other mythical creatures found in fantasy books, there is a reference to the phoenix in ancient Jewish sources as far back as the book of Job. When Job, or Yov, reminisces about his good old days. Hold on. I just realized Job is the root of Jubilees. That's interesting. Where were we? When Job reminisces about his good old days. He says, and I said, I will perish with my nest like the coal. I will multiply my days. According to many translations, the word chol, or chol, you could say in the Western, refers to the phoenix. In fact, there's a fascinating incident in which the Lubavitcher Rebbe used this verse to show the widow of the renowned artist somebody that the phoenix was indeed a Jewish symbol. You can read that full story here, okay? The phoenix and the tree of knowledge. In the Midrash, so Midrash is just a fancy way of saying like commentary from expert rabbis and stuff on the Torah. The Midrash, cited by Rashi, explains that after Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, she gave its fruit to all of the animals to eat. Only the phoenix, or the chol, or chol, abstained from eating it, right? So we already kind of went over that one, so let's skip that one. The next one, the most patient animal was the phoenix. This goes back to the Talmud that recalls the story of Noah's Ark. It says and this is talking about like Noah going around trying to feed the animals on the ark. He gets to the phoenix. I'm just going to summarize. Basically, he gets to the phoenix, and the phoenix is like, no, I don't want to bother you. The other animals need to eat. Go ahead, feed them. I'm fine. I don't even need it. I'm good. Feed me last. And so Noah blesses the phoenix, and he says, because of this, then you don't, may God bless you to not die, basically. I'm just paraphrasing, right? I kind of want to move forward. All right, let's continue on. Oh, this is interesting. Hold on, let me get this one out of the way here. All right. Now, this next one is going to, I'm going to share this. I'm looking at BibleHub.com, which is one of my favorite resources for studying the Bible, especially because it includes an interlinear and other tools as well. But this is going to come in the form of commentary on the Bible itself from this website. And it says here, another portent, or an omen, or a sign, which shall precede the return of Nero, this emperor from a long time ago, and the end of the world is the appearance of the phoenix for the 5th time. The curious myth concerning the phoenix is given in various authors. Clemens Romanus tells us this. He says, in Arabia, or some other eastern countries, there's a bird called a phoenix which lives for 500 years a solitary life. When it feels death approaching, it constructs for itself a pile of frankincense, myrrh, and other aromatic herbs, lies there and dies. From its decaying carcass, a worm is engendered, right? Plasma. A worm is engendered, which assumes the appearance of the deceased bird. So you have another beam that shoots up, or a worm, you could say, right? Plasma shooting up, and then it branches out and it grows into a phoenix too. This young phoenix carries the remains of its parent to Heliopolis in Egypt. And places, okay, we've kind of already read the rest of that, but I thought that worm reference was really interesting. Next up, we have another reference in this old book from 1618, or 618, depending on how you'd like to see it. This book is called Atlanta Fugiens, or the Fleeing Atlanta, which I equate to Atlantis, or The New Chemical Emblems of the Secrets of Nature. This is by the author Michael Mayer, and it was written or published in 1618. And his reference to the phoenix says this. Let's see, hold on. I gotta make it a little smaller, actually. All right, so he says this. He's talking about this serpent, luxurious in itself, impregnating itself, and bringing forth in one day. It lives and endures a very long time and multiplies itself. For what Virgil writes concerning the phoenix agrees likewise to this, for it's the same bird. It's very difficult to climb the nest of the phoenix. That's because this mountain is basalt columns that are pulled up, lifted up, and created from the electrical charge that is bursting forth from the earth, like I said, drawing and pulling and attracting all of that magnetite and other magnetic materials, or metals and stuff, to it, right? And it comes to it, and all this even metal in its liquid form and magma and all that stuff. That's exactly how those columns are formed today in places like the Giant's Causeway and the Devil's Tower and stuff. These places of power burst energy out of the earth, and it pulls the earth towards it. And when the earth gets pulled towards it, it petrifies when it gets too close. And then the loose debris and mud and stuff pulls up over that, and it petrifies. And then it pulls up again, and it petrifies, and it pulls up. And the mountains are lifted up by this entity, you could say. Where was I here? Oh, he is the dragon who remarries himself. Okay, he's talking about the phoenix and the dragon. And he goes on to say, it's very difficult to climb the nest of this bird. It fights with the mercurial serpent and overcomes it. That is Sol. Now, Sol is that right there. That right there is not an eclipse of our sun. It's the inverted dome. It's the Aegis of Zeus. It's all of that, right? It's that other solar deity that existed a long time ago that we don't have today. Okay, and there is this fight between the phoenix and this serpent from above. Okay. With Luna, which is another word for the moon, it is conceived by the wind and carried in its belly and born in the air. This mountain that you're seeing pictures of over here, the plasma volcano, is directly under the real moon, which is the only star in the sky, the only real actual physical star. The other ones are just points of focus, okay? But there's a part of the dome or a part of the firmament that bends downward right at the top, looking down at us. That is the only star that there is. That's the only one that lights up that's actually physical. It's because it's a part of the firmament. And that's equated with Luna. It's equated with moon gods. And that mountain is the mountain of the moon. It's always directly below it because it's at the center of the world. What else? Let's see. Oh, so containing within it the little stone founding is by many men called todium. This is where totem poles come from, or totim. Tet is really the origin of this word, which is where thoth comes from. Thoth, tet, tat, titan. It's the root of titans and stuff. And that's because of the shape of paradise. It's a circle with 4 rivers, which creates an X. That's the ancient number 9 in Phoenician. But also in Phoenician, it's the letter... damn, my mind just went blank. Oh, it's Tet. So it's the letter Tet. Sorry, I'm kind of getting tired now. Let me read this part. But does he make a nest on the mountains, and fitting there cry out? This other man gives the answer. Contemplate the highest mountains, both those on the right, excuse me, but those on the right and those on the left, and climb up even further. There our stone is found, and in another mountain which produces all sorts of printers' colors and spirits or spices. There it is likewise. So I'm just going to sum this up. Okay, they're talking about this special stone. This is the philosopher's stone. This is the nest where the phoenix lives, is on high and lofty mountains. As a matter of fact, if you look at Mercator's map of the Arctic, in the middle you'll see what most people just say Rupus nigra, which means dark mountain, right? Or dark rock, black rock. But the full name of it, according to Mercator, is Rupus nigra et altissima. And that means the extremely tall, high, vertical, I'm paraphrasing. Okay, quite literally it means the dark rock that is extremely tall and lofty, which implies a cliff. Like it's a cliff-like plasma volcano. All right, anyways, I'm going to continue on. I might be losing my voice here. All right, so because I think I'm losing my voice, we're just going to touch on a couple more of these and probably wrap things up. Well, no, I got a few more things to talk about. Fudge. There's so much to talk about. I could easily have split this into like 12 videos, I guess, but I don't know. Now, biblical history. The bird, proudly willing to burn, so that he may live again, chooses the flames of fires that burns the aged phoenix. The nature stands still till the new young bird starts again and begins the legend of the phoenix. That's from Claudian. Let me see what else we have. We talked about the Jewish myths. I'll skip that. The Greek legends. Perching upon the palm tree, like we talked about. I'll skip that. There are Chinese, Indian, and Native American legends of the phoenix as well. Let's see, we're going to skip that. We already quoted Herodotus. I'm going to skip that. All right, we're skipping all that. All right, next up. Oh, the Calcadry. So there's also a bird. The phoenix is also called Calcadry, which implies brass or copper hydra, right? The hydra is that serpent from above where you cut off one head and another one grows in its place. That's plasma, right? The plasma filaments as I shared with you, right, that they're calling Steve these days. Plasma filaments up there in the heavens, they can branch out, they can split off, and they especially do that when they get close to the ground. Just like within a plasma ball, if you touch the outer edges, you'll see it split. That's the Hydra. Brass means brazen or illuminated or on fire in the ancient world. So the brass Hydra, or the fire serpent, basically. Some people say water serpent. Hydra is related to the word water because there's waters above. That's where it comes from. What else? I think that's pretty much it. Oh, the name has been interpreted as a translation of Nehushtan, the bronze serpent constructed by Moses to protect the Israelites from attacks by flying serpents that were fiery. Right? These are not flying snakes. It's not a snake at all. These are flying light serpents, not snakes or seraphim, right? These are plasma from the heavens descending, which if you find the right historic records, for example, one of my favorite ones that I mention quite often is the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles. They also felt that this happened. This also might be related to the whole story of St. Patrick and Ireland and the snakes that he was trying to get rid of and whatnot, right? All right, so let's continue on. All right, I think that's it for that. Oh, last but not least, for as far as historic writings and stuff, just another reference. Since I do like the Native American tribes, we've got a reference from the Lakota, also known as the Sioux. The Lakota people have tales of the Thunderbird, a powerful spirit bird linked to storms and creation. Oftentimes, these cosmic birds they'll be responsible for the winds of the world, or for tempests that arise, or world hurricanes, world storms that exist, or did exist, and will come again. The cosmic bird is said to control the weather, and it's tied to creation myths. Ojibwe, the Ojibwe or the Anishinaabe. The Ojibwe have a creation story involving a giant bird called the Anemiki, the Thunderbird. The Thunderbird is believed to have helped shape the earth and fought against evil water spirits. Now, also, this is where you get like the pyramid shape too, right? I was kind of talking about that earlier, right? That's why you see like the pyramid, right? Now, humans replicate that, what nature can naturally do on its own. Humans saw that and they would replicate it, or they build a pyramid to house that entity or deity or whatever. The Zuni, in Zuni mythology. Oh, the Zuni have some really good stories of creation. In Zuni mythology, the Ewan Awilona, the creator, manifests as a cosmic bird who brings the sun, the moon, and the stars into existence. In Freemasonry, you'll see this represented symbolically by like a ladder or a pillar in the middle, and then on either side they have these other two pillars, and one will have the sun on one side and one will have the moon on the other side, and usually they have like the all-seeing eye in the middle, which is that inverted dome at the top, which we've discussed. The Hopi, I love the Hopi, also have stories involving a great bird called Pehos, believed to assist in creating the world and controlling nature's elements. That's all I'm going to be sharing, although there are infinitely more stories and references, historically speaking, from scriptures and writing across time. Those are the ones that I just wanted to share with you. So, the last thing that we're going to do... Let me get a drink. It's not Pepsi. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to I'm just going to touch on a few different topics that are related to this concept. The totem poles, or the Tet-Im poles. We talked about that. That's why totem poles. Here, I have one right here. Let me show you. Totem poles have a thunderbird on the top, a true totem pole, right? And there's totem poles the world across. Hold on, let me grab this real quick. All right, so here is an example. A totem pole. Right? This is my bedroom. My bedroom's like a little plasma apocalypse ancient Oblivion museum. All right, so here's the totem pole, right? You have the Thunderbird on the top. You'll almost always have two eyes on either side. These are those toroidal currents, instabilities. They actually go all the way around. So you'd have to imagine this is 360 degrees. This is a two-dimensional representation, basically. But anyways, you have these wings. These are the auroras, and they branch out. They feather out exactly how you see right there, right? So this is the main beam of plasma that shoots up. It creates little, the eyes are like little plasmoids that are created by this. They're also the fruit of the tree of life, or the olives of the Mount of Olives, the olive tree and stuff. Oh, and then at the top, sometimes they give these birds these weird horns or ears. You see these up here, right? This is the crescent at the top, when it is a crescent. So that inverted portion of the dome that lights up, that also acts as an ancient sun, oftentimes those are the cow. That's where the golden calf and all that stuff comes from, right? So this is the crescent that's at the top. Sometimes it's a circle at the top, which then becomes the head of this entity, or Atlas, or whoever, right? I mean, Atlas is seen as holding up that circle, which is the moon, which is the world, or a part of the earth, which is the firmament. All right. This is a type of world tree. Oh, I'm going to talk about those in a minute too. This is the world tree. So the Axis Mundi, the world tree, not a physical, actual tree with bark. So, and that's fine if there's a lot of people that think that the world tree was the actual physical tree. I'm not one of those people. I do believe that we had ancient gigantism in flora and fauna of the world across. I do believe there were huge trees, much bigger than sequoias and redwoods, but not this big. Not this big. This is a spiritual version of a tree, just like Adam Kadmon is the spiritual version of a man, or the first man. Okay? The cross, the ancient Vav, or tent peg, the thunderbird, the cosmic bird, the Irminsul. The Irminsul, I did a whole presentation on the Anglo-Saxon tree of life. It's a cross, basically. It's a beam that shoots up, and they have it. If you look up Irminsul, it's a beam that shoots up out of a volcano, okay, every time. And then as it goes up, it branches out. It splits off on the top. Jacob's ladder, Jack's beanstalk. This is Excalibur. Now, if this is Excalibur, what does that say about Arthur? Or Har, which means mountain, Tor, which means tower, or also implies tower, or Thor, right? The thunder god, the thunderbird, etc. The singing sword, etc. Light pillars. So you've seen some images of light pillars here behind me. It's a natural occurring event with how light works whenever it's refracted and reflected off of, frozen particles in the atmosphere, or off of mist and vapor as well, right? So whenever we have this atmospheric depressurization, you will have a mist that rolls in the world across. Some people might see it as a smoke, like they do in Islam, where a smoke engulfs the world. And there will be actual smoke from fire and stuff too. But it will be a vapor. It'll be a mist. It'll be a vapor under the dome, which acts as a canopy or a tent for us. What else? Blue jets, transient luminous events. I've covered quite a few of these different types of transient luminous events, which are the things that happen that are more than just lightning, which most people are only familiar with lightning, okay? But you have ball lightning, which is self-contained plasmoids that can hover about like ghosts or roll around, and they can get bigger and smaller, and they can change shape. They can squish out into like cigar shapes and stuff, or ovals and stuff. You've got sprites. You've got little pixies, which are like little flashes of light, and those accumulate energy, and then they lose it, and they accumulate it, so they look like little flashes in the sky. And then you have blue jets. So blue jets are also ionized gases that are following, just like you see right here behind me. That's a blue jet. It doesn't have to be blue. It can be purple. It can be all kinds of colors. But that's why I call these the blue beams, right? This is just artwork that I've created. That's the doom shape up there in the sky. Okay, that's opening. That's the sky ripping open. I quite like that one. What else? Oh, plasma volcanoes. So I kind of already discussed plasma volcanoes. They're created by the Earth. I believe all volcanoes. I don't believe in this whole theory that lava builds. Lava is a liquid and it just spreads out. There's no way lava is just creating volcanoes like that. Not only that, but the entire volcano should be obsidian. It doesn't make sense that you would have soil and stuff like that. unless you add billions of years and you just make believe. But anyways, all volcanoes on Earth are potential plasma volcanoes whenever the cycle reverses and the energy bursts out of these places. Right now, these inner Earth entrances, which are all caverns that go deep enough, including volcanoes, they're sealed off. Okay, so they're for different reasons, but they're all sealed off. They're all plugged up. They got lava or they're hardened up or whatever. But the time will come when those will all blow out. And you'll have these smaller versions the world across, little versions. The big one is in the middle of the world. In the middle of the world is the North Pole, based on my research. Here's that Egyptian one. Oh, the dung beetle, they didn't worship an actual beetle that rolls balls of crab, just so you know. Okay, that's symbolic of the squatter man, of Atlas holding up that, the beam holding up the, you know what I mean? So it's legs go up, legs go down. That's also the Irminsul. That's the Thunderbird. That's, you know, the double axe. Sometimes the phoenix has two heads too, so it splits at the top. So sometimes they show you know, a double-headed phoenix or whatever. Now I'm just looking at the pictures. This place where this pyramid means fire on the inside or light on the inside. Fire amid, light inside. Right? That's where pyramids come from. And that's why you have all this imagery and symbolism of, we know there's supposed to be a light coming out of the top of these pyramids. We know it. That's seeped into our collective subconscious to the point where we built Luxor in Vegas with a light beaming, a blue beam shooting up into the heavens, right? Project Bluebeam. Okay. It is not Project Bluebeam. It is Project Bluebeam. Okay, this is Project Bluebeam. This is whenever people will see gods in the sky and they'll interpret it however they imagine their God to look. If it's Jesus up on the cross, or if it's Odin on a tree, or different ways of seeing these things and interpreting them. This is Project Bluebeam. It is not the government doing this. It is nature doing this. The government or the elite of the world, there may be some who know about it and those who have leaked it to others, but this is not like a government project that they're orchestrating. It's not going to be holograms based on our modern technology. This is going to be natural holograms or natural sources of light from above and terrestrially. And there's a lot of other things too, like this is when the firmament opens. This is whenever the cavernous systems of the world open. So otherworldly creatures, aliens, will invade. They will show up from the heavens, floating down, and they will come up from the bottomless pit. They will come up from within the earth as well. So all of the elements of Project Bluebeam traditionally are true. From my perspective, they're just kind of cartoonified, you know, based on just kind of, you know, modern thinking or whatever. And that's also why you'll see like this UFO and then like a blue beam that's a tractor beam or whatever. That's just symbolic imagery. And the people floating, that's due to the depressurization and Archimedes' principle causing the loss of atmosphere, causing an increase in buoyancy, and things float. So it's, you know, people, that we have this collective subconscious that tells us that there is a beam of light, that there is a circular object in the sky right above it, and that people float. And that's exactly what happens. What else? Oh, last but not least, the plasma volcanoes and other openings are these caves. They're places of power, okay? Which is why so many cathedrals in the ancient world and castles were built on top of these cavernous openings, because that's why they put their dead there. Why would you want to live on top of the place where you bury your dead? Why would you want to build a holy house of God on top of a place where there's decrepit bodies rotting? They don't mix, unless they do. Unless you put them down there purposefully without just, you know, putting them buried in dirt and stuff, but you actually make little houses and homes and a necropolis and pathways and doors and little houses for the dead, because you expect them to come back to life. These blue beams of energy, like I talked about earlier and mentioned, create cellular regeneration. They stimulate the cells of the very bones of our body. And this is why it is the fountain of youth. It does bring the dead back to life. The dead that are put in these catacombs and whatnot, they come back to life. They regrow their flesh and their bones and their muscle and tissues and whatnot. These cave systems are also where famous wise men and wise women of ancient times, both legendary, mythic, and real and historic, have lived, and where they have studied, and where they come from, Merlin being one of them. The legends say that King Arthur as a young boy was taught by Merlin in his crystal caves. We've got ancient seers of old, prophets and prophetesses, oracles, the oracles of Delphi in particular, which I don't think is, I don't know if it's located in the modern Delphi. I don't know, it's possible. But the Oracle of Delphi, she didn't just go down into a cave or whatever. And some people would say she smelt gases. That's a possibility. It's not that she's high. It's that there's energy down there. There's residual energy that hasn't yet gone all the way down into the abyss, and it's still left over. Or this is the time whenever they're, either those beams were still there, or they just recently went down, and they go down just like liquid would go down, right? So you put these people down there, and they have access to the knowledge of the world, because these beams vibrate with the frequency of the earth, and they contain and collect and remember information. And so the people that resonate with that energy, with their soul and their brain and all that stuff, they have access to vast amounts of information. And these turn into oracles and prophets and priestesses and stuff. And it all depends on which side of your brain that you're using whenever this happens. So sometimes they speak to you in symbolism and dream form and pictures and stuff like that. Which is how our language began, right? But now we're way more onto the left side of the brain, which is more mathematical and glyphs that don't make any sense. The ancient language was picture form. That's where Phoenician came from. Right? One of the oldest languages, if not the oldest written language that I've come across, I believe, and it stands to reason, would be pictures. Sharing a picture, and then here's another picture. A picture by itself is open to interpretation. 2 pictures builds context for a message. More pictures builds more context. There's more to that, but I'm gonna move on. Prophets, right? Mother Shipton. Remember earlier I played that Mother Shipton prophecy? Mother Shipton is said to have lived in a cave as well. A very interesting cave. And the cave of many gods and savior figures throughout time. I'm losing my voice, so I'm going to finish up and say thank you all very much for your support. Thank you for showing up. Everybody in the live stream, high fives. I appreciate your time. If you're interested in this topic, I have 2 really good books about it. The first one, which I recommend reading first, is the Ancient Oblivion, the Plasma Apocalypse. You may buy that off of Amazon. Later this month, I will start selling my own books through my website myself, and people can write to me and they can get autographed copies of my books and stuff. And my newest one is all about this topic: the plasma volcano, the phoenix, the beam of energy, the tree of life, the fountain of youth, Hyperborea, the Garden of Eden. And that one is called Ancient Oblivion, Return to Hyperborea. You can also check out my website, JayDreamerZ.com. And there's a lot of visual and audio examples there. And there's a free trial, 24-hour free trial. Thanks for joining me on this presentation of the Phoenix. Until next time, I'm JayDreamer saying good vibes and goodbye.